Okay, I think it's 11 o'clock, so it might as well start. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Macias. I'm a sales engineer with InterSystems, based out of the United Kingdom, as you can probably tell by now from my accent. And together with Bruce Porteous, from one of our application partners, Northgate Public Services, we're going to be covering this topic entitled Many Data Sources, One Application. So before I start, a quick show of hands. How many of you are Ensemble users, have developed with Ensemble? Okay, so a few, that's good to know. So an agenda for what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start off by talking about the need for composite applications. So this is the one application sitting on top of many different data sources. Then I'm going to talk about some of the use cases that you might find a composite application in. Some of those, in fact, probably all of them will be familiar to you. Then we'll talk about approaches for delivering these types of applications called composite applications. Then I'll go on to Ensemble as a platform that allows you to deliver these type of applications. And then I'll hand over to Bruce, who will go through the Connect platform, a platform that's been built specifically for police forces, which is implemented in 3 police forces in the United Kingdom and is going to be scaled up to a larger number. So in that part of the session, you'll see how Ensemble is being used to deliver a composite application within a police force environment. And then we'll have a summary, and at the end of this, we'll be open to question and answers. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the landscape. So this is the landscape that most enterprises, regardless of the market sector, find themselves. Many different types of applications. Nice little picture of silos over there you might recognize. And these are the applications you have within the organization. You have new business applications that might be purchased or they might be in-house developed. You also have a lot of legacy available as well, which is not a bad thing, as we'll go on to describe. And then there's third-party applications. These might be, in the case of the police force, it might be national databases, national systems. And these are systems which are out of your control. In this day and age, you also find a combination of on-premise and cloud-based solutions as well. You'll find that applications don't easily integrate. And you'll also see as well that the applications that you have available to you all have inherent value. So the concept of ripping and replacing those systems and building a new one is really not a practical solution, because there's a lot of value in those back-end systems. And in that landscape as well, the user experience with these applications varies depending on whether they're using a browser or whether they're back in the office or whether they're out and about using mobile devices. So if we look at the impact of that kind of environment, you'll see that the first impact is it makes you quite inefficient now, and also adds risk in terms of delivering your business. So a good example of this came from a chief clinician that I worked with in terms of delivering a portal-based solution within a hospital in the United Kingdom. And the chief clinician said to me, Mark, your portal doesn't really give me any data that I can't access in my back-end systems. So if I want to find out about medications, I can go to the pharmacy system, log into that. I can go to the laboratory system to find lab results, so on and so forth. But he said what it does do for me, this portal, is it gives me a seamless view. It makes me much more efficient. I can go around with my tablet device and do a ward round and look at the patient record without having to log in through to different systems. So where does the risk come in? Well, the risk is very simply the fact that if I'm logging into different systems in a clinical environment, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the same patient across these different systems. And this is relevant to any other market sector as well. Some composite functionality as well might not be available in the back-end system. So you might have to take some functionality in system 1 and blend it with some functionality system 2 in order to deliver the functionality that's required by the business. Applications aren't available on user devices. So some will be green screen, some will be fat client. They might not be easily accessible from a mobile device. And the functionality is inflexible. So we look at some use cases, first of which is in healthcare, the electronic health record is a good example of a composite application. And a platform that can be used to deliver that is the Healthcare Information Exchange. What the Healthcare Information Exchange does within a healthcare environment, it allows you to take clinical data available regarding patients, available in different systems and also different organizations, and put it all together so that the clinician can provide care to the patient. In financial services, we're all users of this. Some of you will have logged into a customer portal within a financial service, but when you dig under the covers, I'm sure you'll be aware that financial services have undergone large numbers of mergers, and the applications are typically very much product-based. So there might be a mortgage application, a savings application, different types of investment applications. But as a customer, I just want to log into the portal and grab all the data that relates to me as a customer of that financial organization. And in public safety, a similar scenario as well. The applications typically were written specifically for the activities, so things like crime reporting, intelligence gathering, custody, and so on, were different applications, whereas the Connect platform puts all of that functionality and data together with functionality and data available within national systems to make the role of the police officer much more effective. So now let's look at what approach is typically taken for delivering this type of vision. And the main approach really is a service-oriented architecture. Now, this is definitely not dead. It's still used nowadays. It's been in favor for quite a few years. And most of the composite application development, if you look at it, really, it boils down to the implementation of service-oriented architectures. And this is all about taking back-end functionality within all the different types of applications I was talking about. So the on-premise applications, the national applications, the legacy applications, then exposing them as services and then allowing you to build applications on top of those services. So diagrammatically, that looks a little bit as follows. You have, at the bottom of this slide over here, you have your corporate assets. You have your database, you have your applications, you have your technology stacks, which might be specific messaging standards for your market, so HL7 in healthcare, Swift in finance, and so on. And what you do then is you expose those back-end assets through a series of services. And on top of those services, then you start to build processors, and on top of those processors, you can deliver composite applications. So the composite applications reside on top of processors, which utilize services which expose the data and capability of these back-end systems. Now, this middle tier over here is referred to as an SOA fabric, a service-oriented architecture fabric, but it also generally referred to as an enterprise service bus. So the enterprise service bus is an architectural model for implementing SOA. The concept of the enterprise service bus is you can take different applications and connect them onto the bus. It isolates the applications from each other in terms of having to have an understanding of how other applications work. So it makes the activity of including new applications relatively easy within your service-oriented architecture. So now we look at some of the requirements of an enterprise service bus. Well, the first of which is, one might think that all an ASB is just a messaging layer, so just sending messages across these different systems. But that's not really the case. You need to have intelligence inbuilt into that, so you have the ability to transform messages, to provide content-based routing as well. There also needs to be an intuitive rule engine that allows you to expand the usage of the ESB without having to resort to code. If you had to resort to code, then it would be very difficult to scale your ESB effectively. And also real-time analysis of the types of data that's going to be flowing through your enterprise service bus, which is going to be a combination of structured and unstructured information. So in this day and age, you would expect an ESB to deliver this type of capability. On top of that, the implementation of business process management. So Diagrammatic processes are important because it removes you away from having to write extensive amounts of code. It makes the business processes also legible to people who are not technologists. So your business analysts will be able to look at these business processes and identify whether they're the right kind of business processes for the organization. There also needs to be support for long-running business processes. So we're going to find out, for example, in the case of a police solution, some of the business processes are going to carry on for decades. So crime gets reported, and the business process won't be closed after a month or a year. It'll be closed after a number of decades until such time as the crime is either resolved or not. So long-running business processes are important. And human workflow, finally, is very important as well. So ESB is not about pure automation. You also need to have human intervention in the business process. And we're going to see that that is a key component of the Connect platform as used within the police forces. Then some requirements along the lines of infrastructure. So the ESB needs to have proven performance. Why? Well, very simply because if it doesn't perform well, then your applications, your composite applications, aren't going to perform well as well. It needs to be scalable as well. It needs to guarantee message delivery. It also needs to deal with the fact that you're going to evolve your ESB. So you're going to have to upgrade operating system, upgrade the underlying software. You're going to have to implement new software packages, new services, and so on. And you're going to have to do that really without disrupting the user base. Because remember, now the enterprise service bus is the layer really between the user with their applications and all the back-end applications that support the business. So it needs to be highly available. And you also need to be able to deliver this in a variety of different models, whether it's on-premise or whether it's cloud-based. You also need to be able to do that. You also need to deal with the fact that you might want to implement a multi-tenanted solution. So in the case of police forces, different police forces within that same solution, and work effectively. Yeah, so you ensured security and data access and performance as well as you start to scale the system. And then centralized management is very important as well. The actual SOA fabric itself might consist of a number of nodes and instances, but the management of it should be simple. You should be able to do it from one particular environment as opposed to having to jump across all the different instances. So now let's look at Ensemble. So Ensemble is a platform that delivers an enterprise service bus. So the capabilities I've described so far are available within Ensemble, and many customers have already built enterprise service buses using the Ensemble technology. The Connect platform that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes is an example of that, but that's not the only example. There's a large number of customers that have done this. So Ensemble, as you well know, is an integration engine, but it does more than merely integration. So it supports messaging and transformation. It also has a graphical environment for the definition of business process management. So this allows the business analysts within the organization to be able to look at the business processes. There's also a seamless interfacing as well with workflow over here, or fundamentally human workflow. So the ability to incorporate human beings into the business process from within one environment. There's also the ability to deliver real-time analytics through dashboarding. And also, finally, the ability to deliver composite application development. So this is all about an environment that allows you to create services, also an environment which has got a very rich set of APIs. So you can access a solution through REST, through web services, through .NET, through Java, through the technology of choice. So why is that important? That's important because it gives you flexibility. You can build then the user interface and your composite application in the technology of your choice. It could be that you want to build it with the InterSystems UI technology, or alternatively, you might want to build it with some other UI technology. We don't predicate what you should do over there. You can actually do it with the technology of your choice on the basis that it's exposed through a rich set of APIs. Okay, so that's described really in what a composite application is, some of the use cases, the concept of the enterprise service bus. I've also described why Ensemble lends itself to the implementation of an enterprise service bus. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to pass you on to Bruce, that's going to be talking about how his organization has used the technology to deliver composite applications to a large police force network within the UK. Thanks, Bruce.
Right, thank you, Mark. So, I work for a company in the UK, Northgate Public Services. What do? We've got three main markets. There's the police, so we do records management, custody management, case preparation, forensic management, number plate recognition, data handling, kind of the whole police process. There are also parts of the company that deal in health, really screening, so aortic aneurysm screening, newborn hearing. So certainly in the UK, babies get a hearing check to really early, find potential problems so you can get early and effective intervention. And the National Joint Registry, so if you get an artificial hip, the fact that the device has been used and the surgeon gets recorded so we can detect early failures, poor surgeons, and that sort of thing. Also local government, housing management, social care, some document scanning, and there are a few sort of national systems. So we run a road levy system for foreign truck drivers, so effectively they pay tax, road tax. And the other side of the coin, we manage a national fixed penalty notice, so if you're caught speeding, that's where the ticket comes from. A bit of outsourcing and document scanning as well. A medium-sized company, 2,300 people worldwide. We've got primarily UK, but offices in Canada, Australia, for example. Now, the company's grown over time, mainly growth by acquisition. Some organic growth, but mainly growth by acquisition. So you can kind of see where this is heading, because you've got a number of starter companies that have come together. Each will have had their own products. And clearly, those products have grown up completely independently. And when you end up with the whole, you've got the problem of bringing them together. Just very briefly, where am I coming from? Well, enterprise solution architect. I've been a developer, worked for a company of 7 people in Cambridge, England. Equally been director of enterprise architecture for R&D side of a large pharmaceutical. Now, been technical design authority for this Connect platform we've got for about 5 years. Well, certainly since the original bid went in. In my spare time, I fly sailplanes. Some people think I'm mad flying things without an engine, but that's fine. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. We're really to talk about the Connect platform and kind of how we brought the different precursor applications together to provide more of a platform. So, initially, what is Connect? Well, it's our 24/7 police platform. So at the moment, I think, as Mark mentioned, the largest deployment covers 3 forces in the UK. That's going to grow to 9. And it's kind of not really multi-tenanted, because whilst the forces all use the same platform, rather than keeping the data separate, we want them to bring them together so they can all share the data. They can all see the same nominal. They can all see crimes in the nearby forces. A while back, there was a murder of 2 young girls in the UK, and it turned out that a whole load of police forces knew about this guy, but they weren't talking to each other. So that's one of the things we're really trying to address, bringing a whole load of data together. Now, I mentioned we had growth by acquisition. So, if you look at the landscape we started with, we had a product called Guardian. That was our crime and intelligence system, and it used a 4th generation language called Uniface. And that worked really well. Uniface is really good at talking to the databases, providing business logic, and putting it up to a thick client user interface. Again, bought another company. We got a custody system that was written in .NET. We had our own POL data store, which is a Java service layer and a relational database. Typically Oracle can be SQL Server. So really, we're starting point, multiple systems, duplicate functionality. We need to transform from individual products really to a platform. And if you start looking at the individual the applications, there's so much duplication. You've got common rail services, things like security, things like audit, document storage, document production, and all the business areas use these services, and there's a huge amount of duplication. So let's have a look at the sort of challenges that we faced. So first issue, our user interface. Well, when this project started, we had some mock-ups. We brought our existing applications together in a framework, and we showed it to the potential client. This was during a bid phase, and the client said, "Yeah, we like the functionality, and it's okay, but it looks like a bag of bits bolted together," which was really quite rude. But it was fair enough, because that's exactly what it was. So we had to bring the stars together, and we did work with a UI, UX consultant. We produced a style guide, and we picked a library. And the main library, it's a rich application, rich client. It's running in a browser. It's all web. We couldn't do a desktop deployment. Police forces don't like managing desktop stuff. There are all sorts of security issues. It's hard. You're deploying it to multiple places. So definitely browser-based. Uses the Sencha library primarily. And if you look at this screenshot, what's really not obvious is that panel on the right-hand side there. That's effectively Old Guardian, but reskinned with a web front end. The bit around the edge and the left panel, that's a completely different part of the application running on separate servers, with a Java backend. And the users can't see it. It's now seamless. So, the main thing there was the style guide, and we use an agile process. And the real key thing there was having the style guide, and making people use it, and having it in the definition of done in the process. Okay, second problem. This is the real gotcha, data. So, you think about the existing applications, the data's in silos, the duplication, address is a classic. Certainly there's a standard for how do you store an address in the UK. British standard 7666. And you kind of like to use it. It's fairly well thought out. Equally, some of the old stuff, it's got line 1, line 2, line 3, and line 4. And maybe if you're lucky, town and postcode tacked on the end. So I'm afraid there's no silver bullet. You've got to do the data analysis. You've got to come to a common data model. But we've brought it together. Now, we use this POL store. I mentioned it. POL it's a standard police term, but people, objects, location, events. And that kind of works for a number of scenarios. We have a POL store. We use it in some of our health applications as well, because people, objects, location, events, and that model really works. So access to data as a service. Now, because we have a service, because we have a common data model held underneath, that does really bring things together. So we have a canonical data model. You've got one data model for the police domain, and it gives us a single point of truth. So you've got gold and nominal. And there are other advantages. So you know that any domain object in your business domain has a unique object type, and it has a unique object reference. So when we get onto workflow, you can see that the two start to tie together. Technology-wise, we use SOAP 1.1 and hence XML. Why SOAP? Well, the tooling and support for SOAP and XML is really mature. And don't forget that we've got a whole range of technologies we're trying to bring together. And sure, JSON and REST works. It's really good in some locations. In fact, we use it between the server layer and the web tier. But core within the SOA architecture, it's SOAP 1.1. And on top of POL, what do we use it for? Well, we need to express queries. So we've got a way of querying a database with an XML, so message, for inserts and updates. We can build a graph together. So, there's an incident report. Somebody who's seen a smash and grab, drove off in a red Toyota at a particular location, witnessed by somebody else. And you start getting these objects and linking them together in a fairly flexible structure. But that way of expressing multiple things linked together, we use it all over the application now. So you can take that graph, you can send it to things, you can get it back from things, and it's become the lingua franca of the application. And we tend to refer to it as speaking Polish, for kind of obvious reasons. And that's really powerful, having that representation. It's a wire format for your domain model. That really helps. And that all comes from having the service. I'll just touch on this a bit. This is the simplified diagram. But you start putting a service together, and you say, well, what do you need to do? Well, clearly query. There are different data types. So data that I kind of just want to store is not part of the core domain model, but you need to worry about that because you don't want multiple databases popping up. Reference data, things like courts, they're slow moving. Data model, again, having the data model driving the service. So we generate the data model in XML, and that's used. There's some tooling that generates schemas for the database. It generates Java classes. It generates the XML schema for the wire format, and the WSDL for the SOAP. It allows us to get a level of governance in there. You've put all the effort trying to bring the data model together. You want to keep it cohesive, and having a single point there actually really helps that. It provides metadata, put constraints on. Things like transaction boundaries you need to worry about, maintaining the data. Locking is important. If you've got for a police system, certainly. If you've got somebody ringing up, wanting to update their record, you don't want somebody to pull the rug under you and have to say to somebody, yeah, sorry, I can't save your record, can you give me all that again? Because somebody else has been updating it while you're doing it. And the other thing we have an output queue there. So everything that goes into the data store gets reflected on an output queue, and we can do some quite smart stuff with that, triggering business processes. So that's the data side. Third issue, and Mark talked about SOA. We've got a whole load of services in the platform. Now we need to orchestrate them and bring them together. And we've used various workflow products before in the company, and we've had some mixed results. And really, you need more than just workflow. It's business processes. Now, Ensemble, you've got the business process manager. You can draw the flow charts, and I think we've got around 170 different processes coded up in that. So there's a lot there. The nice thing about Ensemble for us is that, simple things are simple. You can code up stuff, but you've got the cache object script. If you need to really get down and do coding stuff that's hard to represent graphically, you've got the get out of jail card there. We don't refer to it as an enterprise service bus. We found out quite early on that if you go to a potential client and start talking about ESBs, they can get quite twitchy because they think, well, where's your enterprise? You think you're coming to take over the world, and you have to say, no, it just runs the application. It's fairly self-contained. So we tend to refer it as an application service bus rather than an enterprise service bus. It makes no difference to the technology at all, but it does change the way people perceive what you're trying to do. So that deals with the business processes, it's the service orchestration, and especially workflow. So within the platform, Ensemble is the workflow engine. We tend to refer it as POLEFlow because, as well as the process orchestration and the workflow engine is configured to provide a service, an XML SOAP service in its own right. So we can call it, I mentioned the queue that comes out of the POL data store. There's a triggering component, and then that can use the API to start things going. So there's a lot of asynchronous background processing that can go on. And the other thing about the POLEFlow, and there's a reason why it's called that, invariably you want to do a task on something. It might be progress a case, sanitize some intelligence, go and interview a witness. There's always a record that you're referring to. So those of you who used Ensemble, the BPL on the right-hand side there should be very familiar. I mentioned we expose our SOAP API, and it gives us views of tasks, both by the person whose task they are, be it their own task, be it their group's task, or whatever. But also, equally, if you're editing an object, I'm editing the crime, adding some more data, I can see which tasks refer to it. And that's a level of flexibility that not many products will give you. Actor management, so I can add users to the workflow, and also units and roles. And also the API allows you to start tasks so that the triggering entity can go start this task off because this crime needs processing or this intel needs sanitization. And it's really is an integral part of the application. So you've got the small bit of screenshot. That's part of the creative investigation. So somebody goes in, it's there. They can give it the data that the task needs, send it off. So at all the stages, the users can see what tasks need to be done and get on with them, progress things, move things forward. The other side is interfacing. That's the other purpose we use Ensemble for. So we've got all these services. We expose them to the outside world, so forces can produce mobile applications, for example. Police National Computer is one of the main things we interface to. Now, I tend to refer to it as an antique. That's unkind. It's only a third of the way towards an antique. So a 30-year-old system, and the screen scraping going on right down at the bottom end. When I talked about speaking Polish earlier, well, we have Ensemble. That takes a get POL objects request, our standard request, and it returns a POL graph back to us. So the rest of the processing, to the user, it works the same. They don't know that there's all this, traversing through screens, pulling it together is going on. TWIF and Libra, Crown Prosecution Assembly. TWIF's a really good name. It stands for two-way interface. So I don't know who came up with that one, but it's probably the least descriptive name for an interface I've ever come across. But that's for case preparation. Again, we need to send things in and out. And that's really useful because Ensemble gives you very good diagnostics. You can see which messages have been in and out. You can see the contents and go back to them. So if there's a problem, you can start tracing through and finding out what went wrong. Oh, we sent that to you. We've seen no sign of a response, sort of conversations. I've talked about the speaking Polish bit. So all data in and out uses the POL format. So at the solution boundary, if it's in a weird format, we try and convert it to Polish. So, as I said, diagnostics is really good. That really helps us. And this is kind of what we've ended up with. It's a much more modern layered architecture. We've got the business services, the business application layer, custody, case, crime, intel, some various search and briefing, for example. We've got the support business services there, state management. Radar is the triggering process I mentioned earlier, all our process and workflow in an Ensemble. And there's also some transaction management and document production. And we have a consistent set of data services, including security. Challenges, clearly siloed. We have a range of teams in the UK, and we've got software development in Mumbai. Different teams coming, different technologies, disparate and complex data models we've had. We had to bring those together. And we've always had time pressures for delivery. There's always been quite an aggressive delivery schedule going on. Technically, one of the challenges seems to have been locking in ownership. We do a lot of things asynchronously to make so the users get a really snappy response. but a lot of the, the heavy lifting can be done downstream. And typically, people seem to take a while to get their heads around that. But I think now addressed, and the system behaves itself and works quite well. And I say he's currently in live use, and with about 1,700 concurrent users, and that will go up to about 5,000 users when all 9 forces are there.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Okay, so in summary, I mean, we spoke about the fact that the application environment is complex and disjointed, and this is true to say, I think, in many industry sectors, police forces, healthcare, financial services, and so on. There's also very strong demand to get a single view of all these back-end systems. We've discussed the concept of the composite application, also the concept of the enterprise service bus, although in some instances it will be called an application service bus in the case of the Connect platform. Ensemble is a good platform for delivering that vision, and it's been done within the Connect platform, but it's also been done in a large number of customers out there as well, and we've discussed the Connect platform. So, what next? I mean, if you want to get in touch with myself or with Bruce, we'll be around till the end of the session. You can use Slack as well if you want to do that electronically. I'd urge you speak to the product manager as well if you have some time. A chap called David Lovelock, he'll be in the developer zone. We also have documentation at the back. Josh is kind of available if anybody has any documentation related questions. What I would say is there's a lot of documentation that talks about the sort of things we've been describing in terms of exposing services, SOAP, so on and so forth within the application. Ask your sales engineer to help you in exploring this topic, perhaps through a proof of concept or some small pilot. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you. The developer community, quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with or use the InterSystems developer community? Okay, so a few of you, not that many. I'd urge that you look at the developer community. This is a website, which is community.intersystems.com. There's a lot of information there. There's Q&A sessions. There's a lot of learning capability within the platform as well. The material for this session and the material for all the other sessions will become available on our website on that URL over there. And finally, please provide feedback on this session that we had over here using the Global Summit app. But next thing is questions. So if you have any questions, Bruce and I would be more than happy to take them. Wow. Anybody a question? No? Okay, great. Okay, thanks. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as I said, we'll be around till the end of the summit, so just feel free to informally ask us about anything of the implementation we discussed over here. Thank you very much. Thank you.